Hi everyone, welcome to End Zone Scoop. I'm Liz, and with me are my lovely hosts, Shona and Dana. For those who are listening live, don't forget you can use the chat function to ask any questions or share your thoughts. And today we're going to be chatting about a couple of things. So we're going to be talking about Kenneth Walker, whether we think he's human or robot. We're going to talk about Lions and the fact that they ended the Vikings' perfect record and the injuries that are across the league. But first, it's lovely to see you both. How are we feeling? And Shona, I know that you're literally about to burst like any day.
Well,
It's
she's
so bad.
muted and her camera's off, so I don't know what just happened.
Yeah, Shona's doing her own thing. How are you
Shauna's
doing?
fine. Anyway, Shauna's fine. Hi, how are you? I'm doing really well. Thank you. It was an interesting weekend of football. I mean, it was just like injury after injury, not just quarterbacks, but so many. It was just a disaster. Um, and then there were some really good games too. So it was just a weird weekend of football, but yeah, but got to keep it interesting. That's how this league is.
Exactly. It's been really interesting, and like you say, well, I mean, we'll touch on the injuries shortly, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, this season feels like it's the worst I've ever seen for injuries. It's really bizarre.
I feel like we say that every year, but then I went back and looked, and it is really bad this year.
Yeah,
And it's
wow.
really bad in high-end players. These are players
Oh,
that are,
really?
you know, I see. Okay. Shannon says she'll be back as soon as she can. But it's been, I think the premium players, for lack of a better term, that have really been an issue this year. And like one team getting completely hammered. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
very evenly spread out around the league. So I think that that's what feels so different this year. But there's a couple teams that, man, they just can't catch a break for the life of them.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? Well,
Hmm.
let's get into it then. So let's start with Kenneth Walker. Now
Hmm.
he's been on fire. I think this last weekend is almost when he's been like his most superhuman performance, even with his flu on his birthday. Bless him,
I
two
know.
touchdowns helped the Seahawks kind of back on track again.
Right.
Um, and let's not forget earlier in the season was it against the Lions when he somersaulted over the defenders.
Oh my gosh, right? So fun. So fun. Here's the interesting thing with me when it comes to Kenneth Walker is that we knew, Seahawks fans knew, I think major media had been talking about him quite a bit too. They knew that he was good and that he was going to be hugely important. The problem was that we couldn't keep him on the field so very much in Seattle. And so what has happened since then is, I think, with the change in coaching, the change in offensive coordinator in Seattle, everything that has come, I think that a lot of people didn't really know what would come of that. Until Ryan Grubb, the offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks, came out and said, our number one priority is to run the ball. We're like, wow, that sounds really familiar. We've never heard that before, Pete Carroll. But yeah, and so we're like, okay, but what does that mean? Well, what it means is how much better they are
Yeah.
when they do run the ball. Ryan Grubb a couple of weeks ago got hammered by the press. He was, because they didn't run the ball at all. And it's like, wait, when you're running it, you're winning. And when you didn't, Seattle lost terribly. So I think that they then in the San Francisco 49ers game flipped the script and said, we're going to run the ball every play, and then tried to do that. Okay, well, that doesn't work either. So I think in this last game against the Atlanta Falcons, they really found a nice mix
Yeah.
for Ken Walker. I think that one has been really, really good for him. So in that Atlanta game, he had 14 carries for 69 yards, a touchdown. I thought he had two touchdowns. Oh yeah, it was rushing. He did get a receiving touchdown also, which was so fun, which was the craziest catch you have ever seen. It was so beautiful. He looked like a wide receiver in that moment. And I think that really proved what a dual threat that he can be and how important he's become. Honestly, over the last few years, we thought we were seeing the decline of the position, right? With
Mm.
running backs, and that you thought that they were just going to be almost phased out, kind of like fullbacks had been after a while, that sort of thing. This year, there's been a real resurgence, and I think that it just proves the importance of the position. And Ken Walker is probably leading that charge along with Derrick Henry and Bijan Robinson.
Yeah. And how are you feeling about the Seahawks this season as well? Because I mean, I think I said this in a previous week's episode, but I did
Mhm.
not think we were going to be performing the way that we currently are this season. I don't know why I felt that. I just kind of felt whole new reign, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it just seems a bit
Mhm.
different. How are you feeling about it?
So I really find it's a little up and down. I knew I figured that this season would be roller coastery, right? Like we kind of knew that we didn't. I guess that's it. We didn't know with
Yeah,
all the changes that happened in Seattle. We truly did not know what to expect. We thought that they would have this amazing defense, which has been questionable at times due to injury. Let's keep in mind they've not had their full defense on the field since week 1, right? So we
yeah,
have to keep that in mind. But I think the hot start got people's expectations very high in Seattle. And then afterwards, those 3 losses in a row murdered that Giants game murdered the fan base, right? And so I
yeah.
think that really what is most important here is that we try and keep in mind that this is going to be a very up and down season as they're getting their footing. I think that the Atlanta game got them in a good spot to turn around and have to face the Bills, which is going to be difficult.
Definitely. Shona, are you good?
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I'm good now.
Good.
It just went off completely and I was like, what's going on? I'm back. I'm back.
Welcome back. How are you feeling?
I'm okay. Yeah, I'm getting there. Bit bored, as I said before, but it'll all be worth it in the end, I'm sure. I'm sure.
You've got this.
Thanks, Dana.
Fab. Let's talk about the Lions ending the Vikings' perfect record there. Now, to me, it feels like it's been a bit of a defining moment for Detroit. They took down.
Wait, can we wait 1 minute? Shona was the one who wanted to talk about Ken Walker, and so then she didn't get to. Shona, do you have anything you want to add about Ken Walker?
I just think he's incredible. Like, was he not did he not have the flu on Sunday? And he I mean, I do feel we're slightly reliant on him though. That is my only issue.
Mhm.
Is I feel like when he's not there, our running game's not as hot. It's not as well thought out. I don't think Gino has the relationship maybe he has with other running backs that he does with Kenneth Walker. But other than that, I actually think he's just not human. I think he's slightly robot-esque.
So, like Russell used to be, only
Yeah.
right, for sure.
Right. Before he got married and started to become this whole Hollywood QB.
Yeah, that's true.
So Kenneth Walker, my advice to you is don't marry a singer. No, I'm kidding. No, yeah, that would be my observation. Just that, yeah, I feel like it was incredible that what he pulled out of the bag on Sunday, but I do feel we're slightly over reliant on him, and teams will work that out eventually, even if he is a robot.
Mm-hmm. True.
Mm.
All right, back to the Lions. So sorry.
Sorry, back to the Lions. Yeah, back to the Lions. Yeah, it was just my Kenneth Walker love fanning session there.
Hey, that's fine. He's cool. So obviously the Vikings, they were looking unstoppable, but obviously the Lions showed that they're real contenders this season, like they have been now for the past few seasons, last season especially. How big of a deal of this win do you think it is for them in their chances in the NFC?
Well, to be honest with you, this is currently the best division in football, right? So you have the Lions, you have the Vikings, you have the Panthers, the Bears, and you have, why am I blanking on the last team? Who's the last team in that division? The Bears, the Lions, the Vikings, Packers. Oh, geez, so sorry, Mr. Love. I apologize. My brain, little brain. So you have these great teams, right? All of these teams that are on the upswing. And we didn't think that would be the case for the Vikings, right? Like I had them last in their division. I thought, all the injuries they had, because it wasn't just JJ McCarthy, who's the rookie quarterback, and they weren't sure what they were going to get at him. They had injury after injury after injury. All those guys are starting to come back, and they're starting to come back at the right time. So what that means for the Lions, I believe, is that getting this win shows they still have the edge in this division. They still have the upper hand in not necessarily the talent, but just in the power. We have talked about their head coach a million times. We've talked about the grit of this team. Jared Goff is playing at an insane level, and which is so happy, makes me so happy because he's not playing in LA. So that's a good thing. But what I think is interesting is that this just showed that they still have that little bit of dominance, which they had a couple wobbly games at the beginning of the season. So maybe that wasn't going to be the case this year. The Bears, for me, they have a long way to go still, but they're getting there. And Caleb Williams is starting to settle in, and they're going to be a better team. And that's all that fan base really wanted this year. And then you have the Packers, who lost Jordan Love for a couple of games, came right back, and they're doing well. So I think that this division is definitely one to watch. I do believe that they'll end up with at least two teams in the playoffs, without question. They're all just playing so well. I think they're the only division where every team is above 500, if I remember correctly, or they were maybe before this Sunday. And I have the Lions going to the Super Bowl. And so I truly believe that this is the dominant division in football, which is funny because we always talk about how the AFC is the better division right now. They have the better players. They have the Bills. They have the Chiefs. They have all this stuff. But really, this division, whoever gets out of it is probably one of the favorites for the Super Bowl, in my opinion.
Yeah, Dana, they are. All four of them are on plus 500.
Yeah.
Which that's insane for even one league. But yeah, I was reading a Sky Sports article. I mean, I probably shouldn't read Sky Sports articles on the NFL, but I did. And they were like, oh, Jared Goff staggering revival. And I was like, where were you last season? Like, we've seen this coming. We've seen him building up his potential with the Lions, loving playing his football. They got that amazing run in the playoffs, but they hadn't done in years. But he we've said this on podcasts before, and I don't want to jinx him, so I'm going to touch some wood. But he is enjoying life in Detroit. Completely different to what it was like in LA. He completed 22 for 25 for 280 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions during that game against the Vikings. Right. That's not the Jared Goff we knew at the Rams.
No, not at all.
No, not at all. But yeah, I mean, maybe Sky Sports should do some more digging into his stats from last season too before they say a staggering revival, in my opinion. But I think he is one of their key to why it's all working. And I feel like they've been on such a long time where they've been so bad, the Lions, that it's quite nice to be like, hey guys, look at the Detroit Lions. They're such a nice franchise as well to follow. Yeah. And I feel like they've got all the right tools now to get them where they want to be. It feels like a long time ago that we saw the Matt Patricia days.
Gosh, yeah.
That feels
that was a minute.
Sure that the Lions fans don't want to remember that.
No, not at all. And the interesting thing about this is the juxtaposition of where the Rams are at. The Rams are shopping Cooper Kupp, who was their Super Bowl MVP, right? Like what is happening there? They're talking to people about Matt Stafford, is who they traded Jared Goff for. And so for me, that just shows the difference between building a franchise and buying a franchise, if you know what I mean. The World Series is about to start in the United States. It's between the Dodgers and the Yankees, and the whole country is like, no one cares. I mean, the Yankees and the Dodgers fans care, but that's because in baseball, they bought their team. They threw all the money at it. And that's kind of what happened with the Rams, although there's a salary cap and we got all that, blah, blah, blah. It's not real. But anyway, so the whole thing of it is that they were planning for now. They wanted to win now, and they got them to the Super Bowl. They got what they wanted, but that fall off is so much steeper. Then you look at the Lions, who have been building and drafting and pulling for this team. I don't see an end to this run over the next few years for them. They look great. Even Sam Laporta, their tight end, is not playing as well as he did last year, which is disappointing as a fantasy football owner. But the rest of the team is stepping up, and they're Jahmyr Gibbs. They have so many other good players that I think have really complemented Jared Goff's style. And so it's been this nice balance. The funny thing is the rest of the division is doing the exact same thing. And so this is going to be a division that's going to be in the mix for a while.
It's funny you mentioned that about the Rams, because I said that years ago, like at what cost is this going to be to the Rams? Because they're so focused on getting that one Super Bowl that it could be like they're one and done for like a very long time. And it feels like they are going that way now because they're getting rid of like Cooper Kupp, and they're also considering getting rid of Matthew Stafford, who also was the QB that they let Goff go. It just feels like they're panicking a wee bit because the trajectory that they hoped they'd go on didn't come to fruition, which everyone else in the league or fans could see that was not going to be sustainable. Apart from the Rams.
Right. It's just two different philosophies. And neither is really right or wrong. It just depends on what you want to happen. If you are looking for now, your window, San Francisco is the perfect example. Their window was last year, maybe this year. Injury is killing it.
Yeah.
And that is great, but they're going to have to pay those players. They're going to have to pay Brock Purdy. They're going to have to pay some of those other players to keep them around. But they had built for long term. And what have we seen? San Francisco's been really good for the last few years.
Yeah.
Those bills do eventually come through come due with the rookies. And they, especially when they turn out as well as some of theirs have, but they were building for the long term. That never happened in LA for the Rams. Remember, they didn't have a draft pick for like 2 years. They just kept giving them away to get these players. They got what they wanted. They got to the Super Bowl. Was it worth it? Well, I don't know. They might be bad for a while now as they're trying to rebuild that, and so we know what that does to a fan base. Ask the Browns. So yeah, it's interesting what's going on.
I can't say I'm a huge fan of the LA Rams as owner anyway. So.
No, fair. Neither. It was much more convenient when I could just drive across the state to go watch the Rams play. The Rams Seahawks games. It was much nicer.
Yeah, but it was. It was. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think it's been interesting. And like you say, it's paying off for the teams who've rebuilt already and they're getting there. And like you say, with the Rams, I can't tell you what they've done post Super Bowl. Puka Nacua was amazing last season, but that was about it. Right?
And they did have a good draft this year, but I just think there's too many. You lose Aaron Donald, Matt Stafford's old. Yeah, there's too many pieces there.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a long time, I think, of another rebuild for the. And I feel like, I mean, technically they went home to LA, but like I feel like they don't really have like an identity, like to me.
Well, that's for a little football history for you guys. That's why they left in the first place. That's why the Raiders left. They couldn't get a fan base to stick there. And so the Rams left. They went to St. Louis. The Raiders left. They went back to Oakland where they should have been to begin with, but that's where they still should be. But that's a whole different conversation. LA is a basketball town. They are a Lakers town. They are a LA Dodgers town. And so football has always struggled to really find a foothold there. And the success of the Rams helped that when they moved back and that they were really successful at first. That is why the Chargers are struggling so much. They should have stayed in San Diego in their small market. But LA has always been a difficult town for football. And so we're kind of seeing that again. But you do see that in a lot of the destination towns. Did you guys watch that last Raiders game? What was it? The Raiders-Broncos game? I can't remember which one it was. No, it was the Steelers. 3/4 of the stadium was away fans. Why? Because Vegas is a destination vacation town. A team is going to have a hard time having their solids there. And so Miami struggles with that a little bit, but that team has been there so long. It's very entrenched into the community there. But those destination vacation towns always do struggle. And that's why I think you see these huge fan bases of the Chiefs in a small market, in Green Bay in a small market, And so I think that things like that have really, they're starting to show a little bit for those LA teams.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. When I was in LA, like you didn't really hear any of them talking about the teams of football. It was all in the Lakers games were sold out. There was no way I was getting a ticket for that. The Dodgers, I had to get one like really last minute because somebody put it resale on the morning of. Like that's the kind of town that it is because it's more of a people go there on vacation, or if they are from there, they've been ingrained to like baseball or basketball.
Right.
Crazy world. So moving on to our final topic then. As we were saying kind of at the beginning, we're seeing a lot of injuries across the league anyway, but particularly heavily on the QB front. One I'm kind of a little bit glad for, and I'm sure you'll agree, is a certain quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. He can be gone for the season. I don't care about that one, but certainly across some of the other teams, there's some really unfortunate kind of injuries, or like not even ones where they're out for the season. They're kind of playing, but they're struggling, not so great. So, How do you think these injuries are going to kind of impact things down the line? Because I mean, stuff where we thought a team was going to do well probably might not make the playoffs now because they're suffering with that. So, yeah, what are your thoughts on all of this?
My biggest question would be, can the Browns finally end their nightmare that is Deshaun Watson? Because this is the third season that he has gone down injured. Obviously, they put a lot of big stock on him, taking him there, but I cannot believe the fully guaranteed contract, £230 million. And his campaign's already ended early. He's got still so much off-field baggage. I think there's still 20 assault cases that's open at the minute against him. And he's obviously not loved by the Browns fans. So I'm wondering if this is where they can actually be like, this is the end. But I don't know if they can because of this monstrous contract they gave him.
Mm-hmm. So the Browns are an interesting case right now. They made a big splash, which is what their fan base had been begging for. They just weren't begging for that splash, right? And so they made this huge splash. Deshaun Watson cashed in, and I'm a big fan of get your money, right? Get your money because, as he's showing, you never know how long you're going to play. But unfortunately for the Browns, all that baggage came right with him. So that has been just a disaster ever since. Not only did Deshaun Watson go out with an Achilles that puts him out for the season, then their second-year quarterback, DTR, went out with a tendon injury in his hand, his throwing hand. So they have Jameis Winston, and they just announced this morning that Jameis Winston will start for them. They're also changing up the play call, who's calling the plays, because they're trying to find something for their fans to hold on to. But it does make you wonder if they're going to start cleaning house a little bit so that they can start over once again. I will put my vote out there. Please, Myles Garrett, come to Seattle. He's my, I would die. Anyway, so it won't happen. They'll keep Myles Garrett. They'll keep Nick Chubb. It'll be fine. But that's my dream. But I do find it interesting. If you look at the contract specifics, here's the thing. And I did not know this until I read it in an article. If they can get some other team to take Deshaun Watson and that crazy contract, right? And then that team cuts him, it's no longer guaranteed, and neither team would be on the hook for it. Now, I don't know. I am not a cap. I am not a cap person. I think he would get his some guaranteed money because he has injury insurance too through the team. There's all kinds of stuff. That's what I read. I didn't research it. I don't get the cap. I don't think the cap is real. So the whole thing might be wrong. But if there's a way to finagle it or maybe they only have to pay half of it, whatever it may be, they can get a discount. I think they will do it. On the Archer Football podcast last night, Lisa said she thinks that Deshaun Watson has thrown his last pass for the Browns. He's played less than 20 games in the whole time that he has been there, some due to injury, some due to his fault, right? And his suspension. So I think that they're going to find a way, and there are enough quarterback needy teams that maybe they can get, or maybe they only have to pay half. The other team will pay the other half. I don't know. But the Browns completely screwed themselves with this because they are stuck figuring out a way to salvage this and not look like it is the worst trade in the worst contract in NFL history without question. But Deshaun Watson was not alone. DTR was not alone. There were so many quarterback injuries. Aiden O'Connell out of Vegas fractured his thumb. He's out 4 to 6 weeks. So they have Gardner Minshew, who they had moved on from. And then they signed Desmond, I think it's Desmond Ritter. I can't remember, Ritter out off Arizona to try and bring him. Jaden Daniels is week to week with a rib injury, which would be hard for them because he was doing so well as a rookie, although they do have Marcus Mariota as his backup, who was a starter in this league for a long time. So they might be able, especially with Dan Quinn's coaching, be able to keep him going there. You have Skylar Thompson, who's questionable for the Dolphins, but now Tua might be back already. That's a whole show in itself. Carr finally started throwing again. The Spencer Rattler era might be over, although he did well for a rookie. Like, it wasn't terrible, right? Like, he's all right. And he's brand new. He's new little baby. Yeah. So we're going to keep working with him a little bit. And so we'll see if he comes back here pretty soon. But I do think it's interesting that this season, they're just to be for a couple of teams revolving doors at quarterback. Not every team, some teams still have their quarterbacks. We still got Patrick Mahomes still playing, but even Love in Green Bay was gone for a little while. Then it's been interesting. So I think that for a couple of these teams, their season is done. They know their season is done. They can't play catch up. I think the Raiders understand that. I think the Dolphins think that they can still salvage their season. Although let me tell you guys this. Lisa said something really interesting last night on our Turf podcast. She's a Dolphins fan. She watches that team very, very closely. She's very concerned about hipster homebrewer, which is what I call Mike McDaniel, their head coach, right?
It's like you just took the thought out of my head. I was going to say,
Yeah.
surely they're now looking at hipster homebrewer.
Well, they are. The fan base has been talking about a lot because they're like, you're a coach, so you remove one player and then the whole rest of the team falls apart. Now, granted, the quarterback's the most important position in football, but one catch for Jalen Waddle, one catch for Tyreek Hill. Like what? Why can't you figure out a way to coach around this? And he's never been able to do it. And so now there's question within the fan base whether he should stay, which is interesting because he was so beloved those first couple of years. So interesting things in Miami, Vegas, in New Orleans. There's so many teams. And then, of course, with Cleveland. So, but can we talk about one quarterback that's doing rather well in his very first start, Mr. Russell Wilson? I was so happy. I'm not kidding you. I don't have the disdain that some Seahawks fans have for Russell Wilson. I think he's just fine. I think he is who he is, and he's just never going to change, and God love him for it, right? But when he threw that first long ball, that beautiful little arc, I'm like, oh, there he is. There's my Russell. I was so excited about it for him. He needed to come back from the Sean Payton era. God help him. So I think that this is a good thing for Russell. So it was fun to watch.
It was interesting because obviously he didn't start off that great.
The first quarter was rough.
The first quarter was rough. And then, they're all shouting for Justin Fields and booing him. And then all of a sudden he's just like, yeah, well, I'm kind of used to booing because, I played in Seattle and under Sean Payton. So, and then, I don't have the disdain either. Like when he left, like it it either had to be Russell, I felt, or it had to be Pete and like the some other defensive players because they weren't gelling anymore. It just so happened it was Russell at that time. And then Pete left the season after, but we'll get into that. Oh, it was 2 seasons. Oh, it was.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But I think that's okay because Russell wanted to try something else. I think Russell saw what was writing on the wall, that this team wasn't going anywhere with P, and that's a hard pill to swallow. But Russell is about Russell, and I'm okay with that. But it was a little yucky when he left. Like, oh, these are the teams I'll go to. Before you've even been released, it's tacky. But I think that he learned a good lesson in Denver, that the grass isn't always greener. And now hopefully he and Mike Tomlin will be able to figure that, because that division is up for grabs, I think, although the Ravens look really good. But so
yeah. I mean, I always like Mike Tomlin as well. So if he gets a quarterback working for him and they get into a good rhythm, then I'm all for it.
Me too.
I think you're right. I was definitely bitter when he went to Broncos, but when he went to Steelers, I was a bit like, do you know what? I've punished him now. It's fine.
Well, I
didn't talk to him for 2 whole years. No.
Yeah, it just feel like
he had to leave Denver. It was basically almost career suicide if he didn't leave Denver and move on. So I feel like the Steelers was probably the right fit for him for like what he was looking for at the time, and they were obviously a QB needing team. It's good to have experience behind your like not a rookie anymore, but he's a young quarterback. Yeah. So yeah, I think it kind of all worked out for them quite well, and maybe the fans won't boo him so much next time. We'll see.
No, they're thrilled. Twitter Steelers fans are thrilled right now.
They're like, it's Russell Wilson.
Yeah,
from the olden days.
But the funny thing is, those Denver fans are awful quiet. I don't know what happened there. It's like, oh, you're paying him to go win games in Pittsburgh
because they have Sean Payton as their head coach. Who would be happy with that?
Fair enough.
Who would be? Do you think he's ever going to retire? I hope he does. I hope he just leaves and we never see him again.
Anything else you want to talk about for your wrap up, ladies?
Yeah. Seahawks are trading linebacker Jerome Baker and a 4th-round pick to Tennessee for linebacker Ernest Jones.
Okay.
Oh, that's not.
Why are they doing that?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I have the Hawk Blogger podcast, The Real Hawk Talk tonight. I'm sure we'll have it figured out by then.
I'm sure it'll be a very measured discussion that you guys have.
Oh, I'm sure. You know how calm those boys are.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm not sure I love that.
I don't know that I love that either. Although Jerome Baker, the linebacker situation in Seattle has been kind of rough this season anyway, injuries and not great play. So maybe they'll I don't know. I'm telling you, this season, hold on. Put on the belt because it's going to be a ride.
Yep.
It is going to be a ride this season, isn't it? Maybe we should just all secretly go for support the Detroit Lions this year.
I mean, they've always been my number 2, so.
I just don't want to three-peat, because if you get the three-peat, you're just going to have that.
I live in this town.
I know
live in this town.
You're gonna hear it. You're gonna hear it everywhere. And it's all gonna be because Taylor's wrote a new song for Travis or some nonsense like that, and I just don't want to hear it.
Right, I think that is all for our episode of this week, guys. Those who joined, hope you enjoyed it. We need to start a 1 minute back. We'll discuss this afterwards. But for anyone who isn't already subscribed, make sure you do so at endzonescoop.com. And until next time, guys, thanks for joining us.